Namaste, and welcome, friends, to this evening's broadcast. Most of you, I think, know me. My name is Nayaswami Jaya, and this evening we're broadcasting this program from Pune. You, I, and the whole world is facing a very unprecedented situation. Certainly it's unprecedented in our lifetime. We're faced with the spread of a very virulent virus, and it's spreading throughout all the world and to all countries. Fortunately, up until this time, India has not been as affected as some countries in Europe and China and in Asia, but we must be prepared for who knows what the future will hold for us. And so it's extremely important for all of us now, for our own sake, but also for the sake of India and also for the sake of the world, to rise up and meet this challenge in a positive way. In the coming weeks, and who knows, perhaps months, Nayaswami Dhyana and I will be hosting a series of discussions like this one, classes 5 times a week. I will be doing 2 on Saturday evenings and on Monday evenings, and Dhyanaji will be doing 3 in the mornings during the week, Wednesday, Thursday, I believe, and also on Saturday. Please check the calendar on anandaindia.org or anandaindiaonline.org and a full schedule of programs that are proposed for not only being broadcast from India, but eventually also we're going to bring in broadcasts from around the world, from our other centers in the United States and also potentially even from Italy and maybe even other countries as well. As I say, it's important that we meet this challenge, and this is why we've chosen the topic of magnetism and right attitude in the face of adversity. And it seems that, yes, now is the time when we actually are facing a great deal of adversity. But whenever challenges come, because they do, there's always going to be something. Whenever there's a difficulty in our lives personally, or now when we're faced as a society with the challenge, there is an opportunity, you might say, for us to react to that or perhaps respond to it. And as yogis, we're taught from the very beginning of our training that our job in life is not to react to circumstances, but to respond appropriately to whatever comes to us. A few hours ago, I received a very nice email from D.R. Kartikeyan, a great friend of Swami Kriyananda's, friend of Ananda Sangha, and some of you who are older may remember him as the director of the CBI in India. And he had a little phrase in there that I'd like to share. He said, fear, F-E-A-R, you can define that as forget everything and run, F-E-A-R, or face everything and rise. And I think this is, I love that reminder to our challenge that we have now is to face everything and to rise. And so these programs that we're going to be offering, and also the programs that others will be offering, I see as an opportunity to bring us all together in a common cause to face whatever the adversity is that is before us and to rise successfully and meet that challenge. In the process of doing that, we strengthen ourselves personally, as we'll discuss today and in future programs, and we help society as a whole in this very difficult time, potentially, that's coming to us. It's difficult very seriously now for many in the world, and we need to create an aura of strength around ourselves individually, and also an aura of strength around our society, around this country, and ultimately around the world as a whole. There are 2 points in this program this evening that I'd like to emphasize, but also you will notice as a theme that's going to run through all of the programs that Dhyanaji and I are going to present. And there's 2 imperatives that each of us need to pay attention to now. Be affirmative and be magnetic. And those 2 are in relationship one to another as I want to introduce this topic this evening. Now, this is going to be going for many weeks, and so I'm going to do an introduction this evening, and many of these points that I raise, we're going to go into in a more deeper level in the weeks to come. I'd like to begin with a story. This is a story that was told often by Paramahansa Yogananda. He says, once upon a time, there was a village, and a demon came into the village. He would come in at night, and one by one, he began to kill some of the villagers. And eventually, he had killed 3 villagers, and the panic began to spread in the village. And they were terribly afraid. They didn't know what to do. They could see that one by one, even worse was going to come. Well, they went to a sadhu who was reputed to be a saint who lived in the forest very close to the village. And they went to him and they say, Sir, you must help us. We're being assailed by a demon, and you alone can help protect us. Would you please, we invoke your blessings to be able to help us. And the sadhu, the saint, the yogi, he said, by all means, I'll do what I can. And so the villagers went home, and the sadhu, the yogi, he had the power, and he summoned the demon to him. And he said to the demon, what's this as I hear? You're disturbing this village. You're killing its residents. I command you to stop. And perhaps the demon was a little bit reluctant at first, but recognizing the sanctity and the greatness of the yogi, he agreed that he would stop. Perhaps he would go elsewhere. Some other village perhaps would occupy his time. Well, a little time passed. The villagers came back to the yogi after a week or so, and they were in a terrible panic. They say, Sir, it has not worked. Your blessings have not driven the demon away. He's continuing to kill the villagers. And yes, there's been 3-4 more deaths in the village. What are you going to do? Please bless us, save us from this demon. And the yogi was quite astounded to hear this. And so he summoned the demon to him, and he says, what's this I hear? I told you that village is under my protection. Leave it alone. And the demon said, Sir, I admit, I did kill those first 3 villagers. But ever since I have not killed anybody, I have not bothered anybody. It's fear that is killing them. Their own fear. And you see, obviously, here the parallel for the situation that we find ourselves today. There's the actual demon that is assailing us, and there's also the consequences and the emotions that that demon is bringing along with him. And we ourselves need to be aware of that, to close the holes in our own aura, to not allow that demon to come in. We must protect ourselves in that way, and also be able to project strength to keep it away, not only from ourselves, but also keep that demon away from our village, and ultimately from this world village as a whole. Now, I lived many years ago, or I worked when I was a young man, when I was going to school in the university. I had a job. I would work 3 hours a day in a public health laboratory. And in that laboratory, they had a setup where when you would enter into the laboratory, they kept the lab under high pressure, in the sense of the air pressure was a little bit higher in the laboratory, because when you open the door, the air in the laboratory would blow out from the laboratory into the hallways and out into the public spaces. And it would prevent any air that was outside the laboratory from coming in. Because the pressure would be higher inside than outside. And in this way, they could keep the air clean and filtered and pure within the laboratory and pushing it out. Now, in the same way, this is what we must do. In the building and enhancing of our own magnetism, what we do is we increase that pressure of positivity within ourselves, that whatever little holes there might be in our magnetic aura, our positivity within ourselves, that pressure, there's higher pressure within ourselves, that there's affirmative consciousness and affirmative thoughts within ourselves that are pushing that air out, and there's not allowing any negative air to come into our own aura of magnetism surrounds our body, because we are surrounded by a magnetic aura, and it is punctured by the power of emotionalism. Emotionalism of any kind puts holes, you could say, in our aura, and we find that we become subject to the forces of the surrounding environment in which we find ourselves, and we find that our own inner strength becomes diminished if it's allowed, that power within ourselves is allowed out to leak out through those holes. So it's our job in the face of adversity, and particularly in the face of the situation we find ourselves, is to have an affirmative, you might say, high pressure zone within ourselves, so that whatever little holes are in there, we're not going to allow that negativity to penetrate. Now, when our, you might say, magnetism declines, what we find is, as a consequence of that, as we become more subject to the influences of the mass karma that surrounds us. There is such a thing as karma, as we know individually, but there's also such a thing as mass karma as well. The karma of the planet, the karma of our country, the karma of our social group, the karma of our family, all of these very complex, the karmic influences that work upon us. But this mass karma influences us to the degree that our own individual karma is weak. Paramahansa Yogananda used the illustration that sometimes people find themselves in a mass disaster, let's say an airplane crash. And he said it wasn't everybody's karma necessarily to be subject and to die in that crash. Their magnetism, unfortunately, was not high enough to prevent that from happening, you see. So if we increase our magnetism, we keep that magnetism high, then we find that we ward off the influences of the mass karma that we find ourselves in. And we actually become, in our own right, we become an influence to change that karma. And of course, if enough people bind together and create you could say, create a dynamo of magnetism, it can have an impact in the world at large. And for those of us who have taken up the spiritual quest, for those of us who have become disciples of this path of Kriya, this is our duty at this time, is to come together to consolidate our magnetism, to be a force for positivity in the world, to be able to help not only protect ourselves, but to be a larger protective influence on society itself. It's said that a society, a village, let's say here again, a village who has one saint, the protective aura of that one saint in that village shields the entire village. And so our duty, yes, our first impulse might be to say, let us look, where is that saint that I can hide under his umbrella or be protected under the umbrella? Well, those saints are us, potentially. And the times of trouble and the times of challenge are those times that call forth the saints within each one of us to rise up and take the mantle of being examples, take the mantle of helping the rest of the world at large. And the larger purpose of what we're trying to do here, and which I hope these classes will be helpful, is to increase our individual magnetism. But going with that, there is also this one tool that we must keep in mind that is perhaps the most important to how in these situations do we keep that magnetism high in such a way that it has this influence of helping others. And that's, we must keep an affirmative attitude, an affirmative presence in our individual lives, and that spills over in terms of an affirmative attitude as a group. Now, why? I'd like to explore that a little bit. When we start, if you've come to Ananda Sangha's programs, if you've taken level 1, you've learned to meditate, one of the very first things we emphasize, and this is one of the very first things that Paramahansa Yogananda emphasized in his lessons on meditation, on his lessons of taking the steps to follow to ultimately become a Kriyaban, is we learn to develop the will, the conscious will. Through use of the conscious will, we begin to increase the flow of energy within the body. As the energy within the body increases, we begin to increase the magnetism. And so the conscious will is that God-given tool of being conscious to be able to then use that will affirmatively. And so when I say, let us be affirmative, I'm not saying, let us sit down and do affirmations and prayers. Now, we're going to do those, but I mean it in a state of consciousness, to live in a state of affirmation. And if you're in that state of affirmation, you will be directing positive energy out into the world, as opposed to being passive. You will be a cause rather than an effect. It's that embodied in that statement of Swami Kriyananda, who would always say yes to life. And that's what it means. Say yes to life is to live life affirmatively and consciously. You see, I didn't just say will, I said conscious will. To put our attention somewhere is an intentional activity, and then in that intention, and ideally as a devotee, we're talking about positive intentions, we summon up will and we summon up energy, and our aura becomes strong. Whereas if we're passive, we find that circumstances begin to rule our life. When Paramahansa Yogananda in the autobiography tells the story of the fellow disciple Kumar, and Kumar has to leave the ashram, Sri Yukteswar's ashram, and Swami Sri Yukteswar says, he's, you might say, forsaken the protection of the divine guru. The world at large must be his guru now. And in a sense, that's what we're doing to ourselves when we're not using our conscious will to approach life. We're letting, you might say, the air out of our aura and allowing circumstances to rule our lives, to allow circumstances to be our guru, to teach us those lessons. And we don't want to do that. We don't want to do that because when we subject ourselves to the influence of what's going on around ourselves. So take control of our life. Now, there's a few, this is what we're going to be talking about in the classes that come ahead, but I want to say a few things practically, what we can do now to develop. And one is, we know the necessity for bringing our attention here to the point between the eyebrows, to be able to be acting from that point, to say, yes, I will reason, I will act. And then, of course, we bring in, as a devotee, as a disciple, we bring in that other element. I will reason, I will act. But guide thou my reason, will, and activity to the highest in everything that I do. And if we can approach life in this way, affirmatively, the thought of building that aura around ourselves, we find that we have the strength to not only help ourselves, but to help other people. Remember that story that Swami Kriyananda would say? He was in the ashram of his guru, and he went through a period of his life where he was in a mood. And he couldn't shake it. But eventually, through the summoning up his will, he drove that mood out of himself. Get out! And he found that the mood passed, and he went out and he saw Master. And Master just smiled and patted me and says, very good, very good. No more moods now. For otherwise, how can you help other people? And that's really what it is. When we're in a passive state, when we're reacting through emotionalism, in a sense, we're engrossed in our own individual egoic world of likes and dislikes, action and reaction. There's no room left to rise above that, to be able to reach out to help other people. And our duty as devotees is now to put these teachings, conscious will, energy, affirmation, to put these into practice and to be able to then summon the light and the power of God through us to be able to reach out to other people and be a force for something positive in the world today. This as an introduction to what we're going to be sharing and going into more deeply in the weeks ahead. Our next program, my next program that I'll be leading, will be on Monday night. And then again during the week, Dhyanaji, if you look at the schedule, she'll follow up. Also, if you would like, tomorrow, Sunday, we'll be broadcasting the satsang from my flat. As you know, tomorrow everything is a curfew, so we're going to take the camera to my flat and we'll broadcast from the flat tomorrow at 6 o'clock. I invite you to join us at that time. But I want to finish by sharing in this sense of an affirmative mood. I want to end today's program by sharing an affirmation. And I share this one is because this has been written and devised by Jyotishan Devi in Adinanda, and this will be circulated soon to everybody so that as a world Sangha, all of us can be affirming this together, and thereby the thousands of us throughout the world affirming the same affirmation will begin to build strength. And so it hasn't been circulated yet, but I'm introducing it to our group here this evening. And I'd like you to sit up straight. I'd like you to close your eyes. And I'd like you to repeat after me this affirmation. Put your attention here at the point between the eyebrows very firmly as we do this. Repeat after me. God's light is within me and around me.
God's light is within me and around me.
With the sword of faith in my hand.
With the sword of faith in my hand.
With the love of God in my heart.
With the love of God in my heart.
I am a warrior of light.
I am a warrior of light.
I join my brothers and sisters everywhere.
I join my brothers and sisters everywhere.
To overcome fear with faith.
Overcome fear with faith.
Hatred with love.
Hatred with love.
And disease with health.
And disease with health.
Let us fill the world with God's light.
Let us fill the world with God's light.
Let us do that one more time. Taking this deep within ourselves. God's light is within me and around me.
God's light is within me and around me.
With the sword of faith in my hand.
The sword of faith in my hand.
With the love of God in my heart.
The love of God in my heart.
I am a warrior of light.
I am a warrior of light.
I join my brothers and sisters everywhere.
I join my brothers and sisters everywhere.
To overcome fear with faith. Hatred with love, and disease with health. Let us fill the world with God's light. Om Shanti, Shanti. And again, reminding you that these programs, you can find a full schedule of programs from people, groups, individuals, acharyas will be sharing from all centers in India and also eventually from the United States and other countries as well will be added to the schedule, but you can find that schedule at anandaindia.org, or you can find it at anandaindiaonline.org. And I would also like to add one final thing. In the weeks ahead, Dhyanaji and also would like to solicit your questions and your queries. Now, these are can be directed specifically to the topics that we're covering, but realize in this time of crisis, this time of real national coming together, that the topics can vary to something larger as well. So do submit your questions if you have them, and Dhyanaji and I will try to answer a few of them every program at the end of the program. And you can send those to the chat function on your computer on the program now being broadcast, or if you're seeing this elsewhere, you can send your questions to online@anandaindia.org. And very shortly, finally, after this program concludes in a moment, there will be a very short break, and then we will have a session of healing prayers for people individually in our communities and for the world, led by Brahmacharini Blazy. So stay tuned, a little break, a minute or two, and then Blazy will join us. God bless all of you, and I hope to see you again on this program next Monday evening at 7:30. Om Guru.